Supernatural Encounters. Today is January 11th, 2021, and today I have a story that is pretty strange and amazing and creepy. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get to reading this eyewitness account. This is from Reddit user Riggs195. I went backpacking in the national park. I don't think I'll ever go back. My name is John. I have always been an avid hiker and camper. Growing up, I was taught everything you needed to know to survive in the woods. My father taught me how to shoot, hunt, and plenty of bushcraft. Recently, I had gotten into backpacking and really enjoyed it. I would try to go with friends, but most of the time I would venture solo so I could go at my own pace. After graduating college, I decided to go backpacking at a national park that I had always wanted to go to, in the Sierras, none other than Yosemite. So, after telling my family where I was going and getting everything I needed to survive out there for a few weeks, I made my way. It's about a 10-hour drive, but I eventually made it, and my God, was this place freaking beautiful. After a few days of hiking, everything went smoothly, and I even saw a few deer, got some good fish, and was really enjoying the great outdoors. Things started getting weird after the first 5 days. Normally the sounds of bugs and little critters at night accompanied me, but there were moments where it was completely silent, like absolutely no sound at all. What kind of spooked me was I would sometimes see weird lights in the distance that I thought were other backpackers, but it didn't look like normal lights from flashlights, more like orbs of light moving around. Another few days passed and I ran into another hiker. Her name was Sandy, and she was a pretty girl, 22, just like me. We made small talk and she asked if she wanted to hike together since we were going the same route. I agreed. We spent a few days hiking together, as a matter of fact. At night, during a campfire, I asked her if she saw any strange lights at night, and she said she thought she did, but took it as a distant backpacker. I didn't press on about it, and just went on with the night. The next day, we went our separate ways, since I decided I was going back to the lodge to stock up on supplies. I then made camp at the furthest campground near the family with a small child. This is where things got really, really weird. It was late. The family was going to bed and I was hanging out by the campfire, having myself a few beers. Later, the fire became basically embers. I didn't want to go to bed yet, so I was just sitting outside, enjoying the peaceful sounds of the night. When suddenly, it went quiet again. That same eerie quietness as before. Then I saw some movement by the family's camp. I couldn't really tell due to the distance and the dark, but I heard a zipper being undone. I made the decision to shine my flashlight near their campsite. Normally this would be rude, but something did not feel right, and I could have sworn I saw a figure of something near their tent. It couldn't have been the parents, since I saw them go to bed and their child when my fire was dying down. Once my light got near the figure, I saw something big, like a bear, but it didn't look like a normal bear. Then as I moved the light right on the tent, it had a child in its arms. It darted out the campsite so fast, faster than anything the size could move. I was shocked, but I got my composure together real quick and blew my survival whistle. Tent lights began to turn on from nearby, and the family woke up, and what I could tell was a panic. "Where is he?" referring to their child. I yelled that someone abducted him, and I joined them to go alert the park rangers. A search and rescue were immediately started. I don't know if they ever found the kid or not, but all I did was give my side of the story, and once I was cleared, I went back to my travels. I was getting tired when this happened, so it could have been a bear. But the way it had the kid in its arms, bears don't do that to people. I quickly left that area the following day, and though it was really hard for me, I hoped for the best for the family. The next story really creeped me out. Not to the point where I ended my trip, but really made me question if I should continue on. It was late dusk. I was fishing near a river, hoping to get a few fish for dinner. Then at the corner of my eye, I saw across the river those same lights in the sky, closer this time. I gazed back towards the river, and I shit you not, I saw what appeared to be two figures walking near the fire pit I made. They were skinny, about 7 feet tall, and had really big hands, and making some sort of clicking sounds. I noped the fuck out of there and decided I would camp elsewhere that night. Safe to say, I didn't sleep much that night. This is the last story I've had from my trip that pretty much sealed the deal for me. Out of all the weird things I saw, this, I can't explain. I ran into Sandy by sheer luck. Asked her how she was and if anything weird has happened since she went our separate ways. She said no and was kind of worried about my question and asked me what did I mean by weird. I told her about the family with the missing child, and she had the face of someone who just heard their family member got cancer. I didn't mention the entities by the river as I didn't want to frighten her. She said she and her friend Emily had been backpacking and were going to the top of some dome and asked if I wanted to join. I agreed, and we made our way to the hike that day to the top of this dome peak. After a night of having a few drinks and good conversation, we all went to bed. In the middle of the night, I had to pee really bad, so I unzipped my tent, got out, and did my business. And right as I made my way back, I saw Emily just standing by the cliff looking out. I asked her what the hell she was doing out this late. She didn't say anything, but I have to go. I told her, go where? It's late, you really should go to bed. And don't get too close to the edge or you're going to fall off. She only responded, I'm okay. Be back soon. I found this whole conversation odd, but decided just to go back to bed. In the morning, I was awoken by Sandy. She was in a panicked tone and said, John, where's Emily? I said, she's in her tent. Maybe she went to look at the view. She was out last night doing that. But when we looked, she wasn't there. We couldn't find any trace of her friend. We looked for an hour in the woods nearby, calling for her name, but no answer. We were about to call it SOS when we came back to our campsite. We saw Emily right by the same cliff I saw her at last night. Sandy shouted, Emily, where did you go? We thought we lost you. Emily didn't respond. She looked like she was in a trance and began to make her way closer to the edge of the cliff. Sandy said in a concerned voice, Emily? What are you doing? Get back here. You're going to get too close to the... Right as she was at the edge, she broke out of her trance and turned her head to Sandy and back to her feet in a look of confusion. Emily said, What? Why am I outside my tent? She took a step back and turned to make her way back to us. Sandy spoke, What are you talking about, Emily? But after Emily took the first step back to us, I can't explain it other than one moment she was making her initial step to go back to our campsite, and the next she was flung straight into the air like a rag doll by some unknown force. Emily screamed. Sandy screamed, Emily! I was in a state of shock, and then we heard a loud but distant thud. We didn't even bother to grab our gear. I just grabbed Sandy's hand and told her, We need to leave, now! Sandy was shocked, tears in her eyes, but I broke her out of her state of shock by telling her, Run! She managed to pull herself together. We ran for what felt like hours, but eventually we made it back to the lodge. The staff asked if everything was okay, and I just said, in an out-of-breath tone, Call the Rangers. Our friends fell from a cliff. It's been a few days since then. Sandy and I spoke to the Rangers and search rescue personnel and told them where Emily had fallen. At first, they thought we could have had something to do with it, but given how far she fell off the cliff or thrown, I should say. And us passing the polygraph test, we were cleared of suspicion. What was even more strange was the Rangers immediately dropped their investigation and began to call in the FBI. The sheriff sat me down and asked me simply, son, what really happened out there? I couldn't hold in any longer. I told him what really happened, and then he asked Sandy if this was true. She agreed. The sheriff took a long sigh and said, that's what I figured. No way anyone could have pushed her that far off the cliff, let alone the other things we found. I said, what other things? He only replied with, that is none of your concern. The FBI will take over from here. I probably do not need to tell you this, but I highly advise you call the rest of your trip off. We were let go and given a hotel for the night to stay to gather our composure. But before leaving, I spoke to a search and rescue officer and I asked him if they found Emily. He said they did, but it was strange. Having fallen off the cliff, one would think they would find her body in such a way it was clear that they died from a fall. But he said they found her body, but that her eyes and her tongue were completely gone. That's all I could get out of him. The following day, Sandy and I exchanged contact info and we went our separate ways. Before we left, she grabbed my hand and said, I'm really glad I met you, John, and I'm sorry our trip had to end this way. But I'm glad we made it out alive. I won't forget you. Please be safe. She gave me a hug, kissed my cheek, and got in her car and drove off. I since have been doing a lot of reading on missing person cases, primarily missing 411. I realized there is a huge surge of missing people in the national park, as well as others. The incident with Emily is very similar to a few cases I have came across. I do still hike and backpack. Sometimes Sandy joins me too, though even with my new perspective and safety measures, the way Emily was flung off that cliff in Yosemite, I don't think I'll ever go back. Wow. When I first read this story, I was shocked at the end. It literally just, wow. I definitely do a lot of research on David Pilatus's Missing 411, and I've listened to a lot of his cases. And for some of the children that went missing and were found alive, thankfully, some of them would report a bear-like creature taking them and taking care of them and feeding them and stuff and keeping them safe. And, I always assumed it might be like a Sasquatch, Bigfoot type of creature, but Sasquatch looks more like a human, if not also an ape. And to look like a bear in the face, like, what kind of creature is this? Is this a cryptid? Like, what is this? And it's just amazing. Now, think about this. Emily, she got thrown off of a freaking cliff. She was in a trance all night long. That sounds like some Blair Witch crap, literally, where they just stand in the wall and they don't move for hours, and then it looks scary when you see them just standing in the corner. She was in a trance. What can make you go into a trance? Like, and then as she was about to walk back to her friends, it was like someone went and just flicked her up into the air, flying way past the cliff. She didn't fall. She got flung in the air like a rag doll. That is crazy. That is amazing. I'm sorry that she died. I really wish a lot for her family's health and stuff, and I'm just amazed. And then, what about those creatures with the long hands, tall and skinny, 7 foot tall? Like, what were those? What were they doing? The orbs, the lights he's seen. I've read many cases and researched many things that, orbs can be one of few things. One, souls, spirit consciousnesses. When people would do DMT, which is a psychedelic like ayahuasca, they would see orbs in their trip, which would have faces in them. And when people take pictures of orbs, sometimes there is faces in them. And then there's been reports like, say, at Skinwalker Ranch, where they watch these orbs open up and creatures come out of them. And like they've seen a Sasquatch come out, they've seen a crawler, or other known as a rake, come out. There was an encounter of two 13-foot tall dogmen coming out of them. That is just whoa. I mean, whoa. What is this? What can it be? And I mean, and then it's just wow. It really makes you think. And but I hope you've enjoyed this story, and I have more stories just like this one, and I definitely will upload them in the next couple of episodes soon. So I hope you guys have had a good time listening to my stories and encounters from other eyewitness accounts, and I hope you have a great day. See you later.